Joining me now is author and talk show host Eric Metaxas. Of course, he is the guy that wrote what you would say is the premier book on the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Last week, some of you saw the clip that was going viral of what Tucker Carlson had to say about Bonhoeffer. As soon as I saw it, I reached out to Eric to ask him to come on to respond. In fact, he himself responded. Here is his X account right here. He wrote, "Please watch the excellent Bonhoeffer film so you understand how wrong Tucker is in saying these things," which I wish he would have me on for a serious discussion. This is getting way out of hand. Let's look at what Tucker said and then have Eric respond.
Because once you start calling people Nazis, we really have no choice but to start shooting them. To be Dietrich Bonhoeffer and sort of reach the end of reason or even Christianity. Bonhoeffer decided Christianity's not even, he was a Lutheran pastor. Christianity's not enough. We have to kill the guy. I'm not judging Bonhoeffer, who was a great man in some ways, but that's inevitable once we decide that people are Nazis. So you kind of...
I actually, think you need to hear the first part of that again, folks.
Because once you start calling people Nazis, we really have no choice but to start shooting them. To be Dietrich Bonhoeffer and sort of reach the end of reason or even Christianity. Bonhoeffer decided...
Reach the end of reason or Christianity. Wow, what an insult. Does he realize how Dietrich Bonhoeffer died? Does he realize how Dietrich Bonhoeffer basically sacrificed himself so others would live? Joining me now is Eric Metaxas. Eric, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
You too.
I was so astonished by what he said. And Brandon, I want to answer any questions you have, but I just want to say that I always liked Tucker. When he platformed Nick Fuentes, I thought, I can't even believe that he would do something that is so wicked that it blows my mind. It blew my mind. I thought Nick Fuentes is one of the most evil, explicitly racist, misogynist. He's a horrible, everything that everybody says about conservatives, which isn't true, is actually true in his case. So when Tucker did that, I thought, what is the world ending? Has he lost his mind? What's going on? When he then said this about Bonhoeffer, what you just played, there's no explanation because he's a smart guy. What he said about Bonhoeffer is so dumb. I say dumb. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just so uninformed that I was shocked. I thought, this is Tucker Carlson. I've always admired him. And what he just said about Bonhoeffer makes no sense. It's the most sloppy, thoughtless kind of statement. We can unpack it, but we just have to start by saying it was absolutely bizarre that he would make those statements. I wrote a 600-page book on Bonhoeffer, which gives chapter and verse on his life. And a year ago, a great film. Anybody looking for a great film? The Bonhoeffer film is a great film. It came out 1 year ago, and it's spectacular. But what Tucker said makes no sense. I'm prepared to get into why it makes no sense, but I don't want to keep talking. So I'll let you ask.
And by the way, the name of the movie, I interviewed you on it about a year ago. What is the name for those who want to go see the movie?
Well, the film is Bonhoeffer. It's like the title of my book, but it's not the same as the title of my book. So it's kind of like Pastor, Spy, Assassin or something like that. I never remember, but that's the one to see. It came out 1 year ago. You can see it on Amazon. You can rent it for $4.99. It's a great film, a great film. And, obviously I always say I prefer people to read my book so they can get the details, but it's a great film. And frankly, the story of Bonhoeffer and what he did is very, very important. It's not just interesting or, exciting. It's actually extremely important.
It is important. And we need more pastors to step forward. He started, as you know, I don't need to tell you this, you're the expert on it, the Confessing Church, for any of the new listeners who don't know. He and a gentleman that he was working with, Martin was his name?
Niemöller.
Martin Niemöller, right? Martin Niemöller.
Yeah.
Niemöller ended up surviving. I think he went to a concentration camp and ended up surviving, and I think he died eventually in Canada, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he lived. I mean, he was in a concentration camp for 8 years, a personal prisoner of the Führer. Niemöller was outspoken, was going along with Hitler, and then he woke up, and then it was too late, and so he was in concentration camp for 8 years, and he lived and whatever. But anyway,
he's the one that confronted Hitler to his face and said, "You told the pastors, you take care of your churches, I'll take care of Germany." He confronted Hitler after that speech to his face, right?
Well, no, he went. I can see why you're saying that, but actually, what happened? I wrote a book called "Letter to the American Church," which deals with this, and then I wrote a sequel which deals with exactly what you're talking about, called "Religionless Christianity." And what really happened was Martin Niemöller was convinced that he was convinced that Hitler was basically a good guy. And that's very easy to understand in 1933, 32, 33. It's really easy for us to say, how did he not know? But the fact is, Hitler was not advertising, I'm worshiping the devil. And so Niemöller went along with that. And a year after Hitler was elected chancellor and president, Niemöller realized that Hitler's people, he didn't think it was Hitler, are doing all these terrible things. I need to have a meeting with Hitler. So it takes forever to get a meeting because Hitler doesn't want to meet this guy, because Hitler's thinking, listen, my job was to fool you into telling people to vote for me, and now I'm in, and you can jump in a lake. But eventually he has a meeting with Hitler. And in the meeting, the mask comes off and Hitler reveals who he really is. And that's when Niemöller understands, what have I done? This is an evil man. And this man is not going to do what he said to me. In the beginning, when he first met him in 1932, Hitler said, we're going to leave the churches alone. We don't want anything to do with the churches. We're not going to bother the churches. We will not institute pogroms against the Jews. Of course, he did both of those things. He was bullying the church and stuff. So Niemöller wants to have this meeting with him. And in the meeting, tries to, this is really the punchline. Hitler's attacking Niemöller in the meeting, how dare you? And Niemöller says, but, mein Führer, what? I care about the Third Reich. I'm a patriot. And that's when Hitler says the famous line, which he actually said. It's not in the movie, but he said it in real life. He said, you just worry about I built the Third Reich. You just worry about your sermons. In other words, the church, Christians have no business in politics, in telling evil leaders that they're evil. Just shut up and do as you're told. That's when Niemöller understood that he'd been duped by the Nazis. So it's
and so then he jumps in with Bonhoeffer and the Confessing Church. But does Tucker not know that Bonhoeffer was safe here in America, working in New York? If I remember correctly, he was concerned about one of the Rockefeller planted churches in New York that was all about social justice. And he said, I had to go to the black churches to really hear the gospel, even being preached. And he goes back to Germany knowing that basically I go back, I'm probably going to get killed. And of course he does. And I think it was from your...
He's one of the greatest Christian heroes. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Bonhoeffer is one of the great Christian heroes. He's martyred for his faith 3 weeks before the end of the war. I mean, it's all in my book, which I'm going to lift up for the camera. It's very heavy. So hold on a second. It's a big book.
Yeah.
It's a big, it's a big book, right?
Turn it sideways so they can see how thick that book is.
Look at that. It's a thick. Yeah,
and I have it in my library. And by the way, if I remember correctly, Eric, Bonhoeffer had the chance to escape, that he was going to be offered basically to put on some the clothes, a jumpsuit of a mechanic, blend in, look like a mechanic and get out. But he says no, because if I do, other people will be killed. So he dies sacrificing his life, knowing if I go out, other people will be hunted down, interrogated, and killed to try to find me. So he lays down his own life.
There's all kinds of, all this stuff is in the Bonhoeffer book. And there's so much, we don't have time. There is so much. He's such an amazing figure. But the reason we're having this conversation is because Tucker said the most preposterous things. I mean, I'm speechless almost that he said such silly things. He said, first of all, he said, when you start calling people Nazis, that's when, you have no options but to shoot them, right? And I thought, well, first of all, Bonhoeffer was among actual Nazis. So it wasn't like he's calling people Nazis. He was among actual Nazis, and he didn't advocate shooting Nazis. He got involved in the plot to assassinate Adolf Hitler because he knew what Hitler was doing, and he knew that God will hold me accountable if I do nothing. So he was a hero, and he was willing to get his hands dirty. He didn't just say, oh, we'll let some other people get involved in the plot to kill Hitler. I'm a man of God, and I believe that before God, I'm going to be judged for all those that Hitler's murdering. I need to do what I can. And he struggled with it ethically. So I'm just scandalized, Brennan, about the way Tucker, again, I want to think well of Tucker, but what he said is so crazy.
Well, he said when you reach the end of Christianity, as though somehow Christianity doesn't include self-defense. And you and I, of course, students of the Bible, in this audience, students of the Bible, we know that we are the government in our form of government, republic, and that we have the right to self-defense, and that the sword is given to the government per Romans 13 for righteousness. So how can you say you come to the end of Christianity?
No, what I'm saying is what he is saying was so confusing that it's impossible for us to untangle the mess. First of all, Bonhoeffer did not murder or get involved in the plot to murder Adolf Hitler. The Bible says we should never murder, right? But it doesn't say all killing is murder. When David kills Goliath, we don't say, oh, David murdered Goliath. Right. No, he didn't. He didn't. Moses did murder the Egyptian, but David did not murder Goliath. When you're in a war or when you're in certain situations, that's called, you say, well, yes, it was violent, but it's not murder. So you're not stepping outside of God's will. If you're in the army and you're in a just war and people are trying to take over your country and you have a rifle and you defend your country, that's not murder. If you're if you're a cop and you see people, there's gun fight in the street and you see innocent people and you pull out your gun, you're trying to defend innocent people. You're not trying to commit murder. You're trying to defend the innocent. So that's what Bonhoeffer was doing. And it's complicated, but that's the nutshell version of it. And Tucker, I have to say again, scandalously made a number of statements that they really make no sense. It's so hard to even get your hands around it. It's so slippery. But he basically says, Bonhoeffer kind of like went beyond Christianity. What does that mean? Bonhoeffer would never go beyond Christianity. He was a devout Christian. He loved Jesus. He loved God. He gave his life. He gave his life for God's purposes. He could have escaped, as you said, he didn't. He could have done this. He could have done that. I mean, he was an incredible man of God.
And how did they kill him in the end? How'd they kill him?
What's that?
How'd they kill him in the end?
Well, he was hanged. He was arrested for his involvement in a plot to rescue 14 Jews out of Germany. He was involved in this plot. So he's arrested, but they didn't know he was yet involved in the plot to kill Hitler. And while he was in prison, that plot was revealed July 20th, 1944. And at that point, 1,000 people are arrested. They're tortured. Names come up and they realize, oh, he's involved in this plot. So at that point, his days are numbered. And so he's hanged right in April 9th, 1944. But he was, he struggled with it ethically. I mean, he didn't say like, hey, let's kill some people. But when you know that millions are being murdered, to do nothing, he knew that to do nothing, God will hold you responsible. And he's often quoted as saying, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. Not to act is to act. Not to speak is to speak. God will not hold us guiltless. Now, I don't think he actually ever said that, but it's attributed to him. And the point is, it fits him. That's what he believed. He believed to sit on the sidelines and say, oh, I'm a religious Christian. I'm not going to get involved, get my hands dirty and trying to take down Hitler. I don't care. he said, God wants us to care. God wants us to live our lives in a way that when the innocent are being targeted, we step up. And that was Bonhoeffer's life. So again, whatever Tucker was saying, it was really weird. And I almost couldn't believe it. So
yeah, it is hard to believe, particularly when you have the history and go study. I want to get into the rise of anti-Semitism. But before I do, I want to clear away any misconceptions about Bonhoeffer, because I will get emails from very conservative evangelical Christians saying, but wasn't Bonhoeffer a big proponent of social justice? And I try to explain to them, wait a minute, he was in America criticizing the social justice, and everything was about social justice. That not enough churches were pushing and promoting and preaching the gospel. So how can you say he was for social justice when he's criticizing it? And I think he was hijacked, right? His name and persona was hijacked, right?
That's the point. And the funny thing is, when I wrote my book, came out in 2010, I didn't know what I would find. I thought maybe I'm going to find somebody who's kind of like socially liberal or whatever. Who knows? So I do the research, and I am stunned that all the stuff I've heard about Bonhoeffer is totally wrong. I was really shocked that these basically theological liberals hijacked him. They hijacked his memory, they hijacked his legacy, and they presented this Bonhoeffer that when I did the research, I thought, this is just wrong. They're totally wrong. They're making him out to be some kind of a liberal. He was not. And so they really misrepresented him. So my book, without intending to, ends up telling the true story. And that's why it did very well. It sold, I'm proud to say, over 1 million copies. And it was translated into 20 languages.
Wow.
And as I said, a movie came out last year. I recommend the movie, folks. I'm not kidding. It is a great movie. It's not like some little Christian movie. It is a great, great movie that tells the story of Bonhoeffer. So, I tell people you can just rent it on Amazon. It's so well done. I was involved in it, and it's a great movie. But he is one of the heroes of the 20th century. And did we ever think that here he is, a Christian standing up for the Jews, giving his life because he stood up for the Jews? Did we ever think all these years later anti-Semitism would be on the rise in the United States of America in some conservative circles? It's despicable. We need to stand against it.